in 1945.
These were Gospels, but not the 4 found in every modern Bible. Texts attributed to Thomas, to Mary Magdalene, even, controversially, to Judas. Why were they buried? Why were they left out of the New Testament? Some call them suppressed truth. Historians call it something more complicated.
Tonight, we examine what these texts actually say and why the choice was made.
Not conspiracy alone, not simple censorship alone, a real, documented process.
This is the story of the lost Gospels.
What the Church didn't include, and the real reasons behind that decision. The New Testament contains 4 Gospels: Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John.
These were not selected overnight, and not by a single decision or single council.
Early Christian communities across the empire used many different texts for generations.
Over roughly 3 centuries, certain texts gained wide, consistent acceptance across regions.
Early church leaders applied specific criteria when discussing which texts belonged. Apostolic origin: was it genuinely linked to an apostle or a direct associate? Wide usage: was it already accepted and read across many different Christian communities? Theological consistency: did its content align with core, widely shared early teaching? Texts that failed these tests, even if valued by some communities, were gradually set aside. This was a slow, debated, regionally uneven process cause, not a single dramatic vote. By the late 4th century, the 4 Gospels we know today held near universal acceptance. Other texts continued circulating in some communities for centuries longer, in smaller numbers.
Many were eventually copied less, read less, and slowly fell out of common use.
Some were deliberately hidden poured, likely for preservation, during periods of religious conflict. The discovery site sits near the town of Nag Hammadi in Upper Egypt.
A local farmer named Muhammad Ali al-Samman uncovers the sealed jar while digging.
Inside are 13 leather-bound papyrus books, known today as codices.
They contain over 50 distinct ancient texts, many never seen by modern scholars before.
Most are written in Coptic, translated centuries earlier from original Greek versions. Scholars date the burial of these books to around the 4th century AD.
The texts themselves, however, may have been originally composed considerably earlier.
Getting the texts safely to scholars took years, complicated by local conflict and black market sales. Some pages were reportedly burned for fuel before their significance was understood.
It would take decades of painstaking work to translate and publish the full collection. The find is now considered one of the most significant archaeological discoveries of the 20th century. It reshaped modern understanding of early Christianity's true theological diversity. Before this discovery, scholars knew of these lost Gospels mainly through hostile early critics.
Church writers like Irenaeus had quoted and condemned some of them centuries earlier. Now, for the first time in over a millennium, scholars could read the original words themselves.
not second-hand condemnation conceding the primary source material itself.
This changed everything about how these texts could be studied and understood.
Let's examine the most famous of them, one at a time, starting with the Gospel of Thomas.
The discovery site sits near the town of Nag Hammadi in Upper Egypt. A local farmer named Muhammad Ali al-Samman uncovers the sealed jar while digging.
The Gospel of Thomas is, structurally, unlike the four Gospels found in the Bible.
It contains no narrative at all, no birth story, no crucifixion, no resurrection account.
Instead, it is simply a collection of 114 sayings, attributed directly to Jesus.
Some of these sayings closely resemble teachings found in Matthew, Mark, and Luke.
Others present ideas considerably more mystical, cryptic, or philosophically unusual.
Many scholars associate its themes with Gnosticism, a broad early spiritual movement. Gnostic thought generally emphasized secret, inner spiritual knowledge over external ritual. This theological direction placed it increasingly at odds with mainstream early church teaching.
Scholars remain divided on when Thomas was originally composed.
Estimates range from the mid-1st century to as late as the mid-2nd century AD.
If an earlier date is correct, some of its sayings could preserve very old oral tradition.
If a later date is correct, it likely reflects developing theological ideas, not direct history.
This dating uncertainty is exactly the kind of issue that concerned early church leaders.
Was this genuinely linked to the Apostle Thomas, or written generations later in his name?
Ultimately, the wider church concluded that the evidence did not sufficiently support apostolic origin.
Judgment, right or debatable, is fundamentally different from active, deliberate suppression.
Today, Thomas remains one of the most studied non-canonical texts by modern scholars.
It offers a genuinely valuable window into the theological diversity of early Christianity.
Whether or not it belongs in the Bible, its historical value is widely respected today. It shows us that early followers of Jesus did not all agree on a single interpretation. That diversity itself is one of the most important things modern scholarship has learned.
Next, we turn to a text that raised very different questions about a woman close to Jesus.
A gospel that bears the name Mary Magdalene.
The Gospel of Thomas is, structurally, unlike the four Gospels found in the Bible.
It contains no narrative at all, no birth story, no crucifixion, no resurrection account.
The Gospel of Mary survives only in a fragmentary, incomplete ancient manuscript.
Nearly half of the original text is missing, lost to time before its rediscovery.
What remains presents Mary Magdalene as a leading, trusted figure among the disciples.
True wisdom resides not in scrolls of parchment, but in the spirit that guides your actions.
Some of the male disciples, in the text, react to her account with visible skepticism.
Peter, notably, is depicted questioning why Jesus would reveal secret teaching to a woman. Another disciple, Levi, defends her, reminding Peter that Jesus clearly trusted her deeply.
This internal tension reflects real debates happening within early Christian communities.
What role could women hold in leadership? This question was genuinely contested for centuries.
The historical Mary Magdalene, according to all 4 canonical Gospels, is the first witness to the resurrection.
This text expands on that foundation, though scholars date its composition to the 2nd century.
That places its writing considerably later than Mary's own lifetime.
Most historians view it as reflecting later theological debate, not a direct historical record.
Still, it offers valuable insight into how some early communities viewed women's spiritual authority.
For centuries, later traditions sometimes wrongly conflated Mary Magdalene with other biblical women.
This blending, not this specific lost gospel, is largely responsible for popular misconceptions about her.
The rediscovery of this text helped scholars separate later legend from earlier historical evidence.
It remains one of the only surviving ancient texts centered on a named female disciple.
For that reason alone, its historical and cultural significance is considerable.
Next, we turn to the single most controversial text in the entire collection.
Unlike Thomas and Mary, the Gospel of Judas was not part of the Nag Hammadi find.
It surfaced separately through the antiquities market and was authenticated decades later.
Its dramatic public unveiling came in 2006, generating massive global media attention.
The manuscript had suffered severe decay, having been poorly stored for many years.
Conservators worked painstakingly to piece together and stabilize the fragile remaining fragments.
The text presents an extraordinary reversal of the traditional betrayal narrative.
In this account, Jesus privately asks Judas to hand him over as part of a deeper plan.
Judas is portrayed not as a villain, but as the disciple who best understood Jesus' true teaching.
This directly contradicts the 4 canonical Gospels' clear portrayal of Judas's betrayal.
Scholars broadly agree this text reflects a distinctly Gnostic theological perspective.
It was very likely composed generations after the actual events it describes in the 2nd century.
This is the Gospel of Judas, a text lost for 17 centuries.
This suggests the wider church was aware of, and firmly rejected, this text early on.
That rejection appears to be a documented theological judgment, not a hidden secret suppression.
The text tells us far more about 2nd century theological debate than about historical events.
Still, its rediscovery offers genuine insight into the diversity of very early Christian thought.
Media coverage at the time sometimes overstated its historical reliability considerably.
Serious scholarship treats it as a valuable Gnostic text, not a corrected historical record.
This distinction matters enormously when evaluating what these lost Gospels can actually tell us. So why exactly were texts like these left out, if not through active suppression?
So why were these texts left out of the New Testament, if not by simple suppression?
The honest answer is layered, and less dramatic than popular conspiracy theories suggest.
Dating uncertainty played a major role. Many of these texts were written generations after Jesus.
Theological divergence played a role too. Gnostic ideas often conflicted with widely shared early teaching.
Limited circulation mattered as well. and some texts were used only by small, localized communities.
The four canonical Gospels, by contrast, achieved remarkably wide, early, cross-regional acceptance. This process unfolded gradually, across roughly 3 centuries, involving many independent communities. It was not one single secret meeting deciding humanity's spiritual fate behind closed doors. That popularized image, common in modern fiction, significantly oversimplifies real historical events.
This doesn't mean the process was perfectly neutral or free from real theological disagreement and politics.
Genuine debates, genuine disagreements, and real institutional power all played some role, historically.
But debated theological process is meaningfully different from hidden conspiracy of suppression.
Both extremes, blind trust and blanket conspiracy flight, oversimplify a genuinely complex history.
The texts were not destroyed to erase them from memory, either.
Early critics, like Irenaeus, quoted and preserved portions specifically while arguing against them.
Ironically, some lost Gospels survive today partly because critics recorded quotes to refute them.
The burial at Nag Hammadi itself likely reflects preservation, not deliberate destruction.
Someone, in a moment of danger, chose to protect these books rather than destroy them. That act alone tells us these texts mattered deeply to at least some early believers.
History here is more nuanced than either simple faith or simple suspicion allows. Today, these texts are studied openly, extensively, in universities around the world.
Far from hidden, they are published, translated, and freely available to anyone interested.
Museums regularly display fragments publicly, drawing large, curious crowds.
Popular fiction and documentaries have sometimes exaggerated their historical claims considerably.
Serious historians generally treat them as valuable windows into early theological diversity.
Not as suppressed alternate histories, but as genuine records of real ancient debate.
This distinction matters enormously for anyone trying to understand this history accurately.
The four canonical Gospels remain, by far, the earliest and most widely attested accounts.
The lost Gospels remain fascinating, valuable, and historically significant in their own right.
Both things can be true at the same time, without contradiction.
Modern digital archives now make high-resolution scans available to researchers worldwide.
New analytical techniques continue to refine our understanding of these texts' age and origins.
The story of the lost Gospels is, in many ways, still actively being written today.
Each new study adds nuance to a genuinely complicated, genuinely human historical process.
So what should we actually take away from this?
These were never truly lost in the way popular legend often suggests. They were set aside through debate, through disagreement, through an imperfect human process.
And then, buried carefully, perhaps to protect them from a dangerous moment in history.
Nearly 2,000 years later, the desert gave them back.
What we do with that gift, read carefully, or read as conspiracy, is entirely up to us.
This has been the story of the lost Gospels.
Does this text serve the unity of the Church?
The truth is often disruptive, yet essential for true faith.